Hello and welcome to our mastermind, Leading Through Crisis. I'm Tom Ray and I'll be your host. And I'm going to facilitate this mastermind, taking us through this time to grow together, to learn together, to persevere together, because we're in quite some challenging times surrounding us. So the way this is going to be laid out is I'm going to play a video, a teaching, a clip of about 6 or 7 minutes or so of John Maxwell, of a teaching he did on this topic, leading through crisis, and then we'll go through our mastermind guide that you all have. And for those who don't have, I've included it in the chat section here, so you can download it and either print it or view it as we move along. And then there'll be time for discussion. And this is all about all of us coming together collectively. That's why it's called the mastermind. So we're going to come together and we're going to view this together and go through this together. We all know that we're facing some pretty crazy times right now with this pandemic going on and the quarantine that we're all facing, especially here in Michigan. I don't know if you saw the protesters heading to Lansing yesterday, but people are serious about their freedoms being trampled on. So there's some adjustments that are going on, and then what we're going to see is some serious changes coming to everything as a whole. I mean, everything has come to a complete halt, and there's some reshifting and some regearing, and perhaps a lot of companies won't make it out of this particular pandemic. So while one side is going to be really sad that these businesses are not going to go to the next level, but then there's going to be those that are going to be starting from nothing and coming out. Some other companies that are retooling and becoming something different. So there's a lot of advantages here for us. So I just encourage you to participate with us. We want to start off with a question, though, before we begin the video, and that is, this is the question. This will be a life-changing mastermind if I what? This will be a life-changing mastermind if I what? Anybody have anything to add to that?
Is this just like about the course in general?
Well, yeah, about this mastermind. This will be a life-changing mastermind if I what? So, what are you? What do you think you're going to get out of this, and what do you hope to get out of this?
I would say other people's opinion. Obviously, it's a very stressful time nationally. But I would say how people manage stress from all different backgrounds and different points of view, for sure.
Very good. Very good. So listen, while we're getting rolling here, let's just introduce ourselves really quick once again so that we all know who's in the room. Again, my name is Tom Ray, your host. And Jack, let's go with you. Jack, who are you and where are you from?
I'm Jack Lovett. I'm from Lake Orion. I work in the lumber and components industry. So I'm a technical sales rep, but I've dabbled in everything from in the shop to project management of commercial contracts. And so, I don't know. I live in Lake Orion, and I'm just here to learn.
Awesome. Very good. And Jessica, she's from downriver. She works in finances, mortgages specifically. So welcome, Jessica. And then we have Jamal on the line. Jamal?
Hey, everybody. I'm Jamal. I'm from Cincinnati, and I currently serve as a high school principal, but also a leadership coach to small businesses.
Awesome. Welcome aboard.
All right.
Welcome aboard. Good to have you. All right. So without further ado, we're going to get started. And we'll be beginning with session 1 in your mastermind guide, your participants guide. and we'll play this video clip coming up here, and then we'll go through the discussions together and see where we're all at. Is that okay with everybody?
Let's talk about how to turn adversity into an advantage. And there's part of this title I like, there's part of this title I really don't like. What I really want you to get is the fact that in adversity, there are certain advantages that adversity and crisis bring to us that without that adversity, we wouldn't have those advantages. We wouldn't have those opportunities. That's kind of the thesis of the lesson today. When I looked at the title, How to Turn Adversity into an Advantage, I wasn't trying to think of it in a wrong term as far as how to take advantage of people that are in adversity. That isn't that at all. I mean, remember yesterday I shared with you that in a leader's perspective, it's always the people first. What's always best for the people? That keeps a leader's motives pure and right. If you and I are constantly saying, well, what's best for my people? Because whatever is best for my people as a leader, I should be doing my very best to provide it for them. But this is a terrific lesson on the fact that in adversity, if we have the right perspective, and this is a lesson on perspective, trust me. In fact, today and tomorrow, this is a part 1, tomorrow's part 2. This is a perspective lesson. What I want you to catch, though, is that without any question, the adversity that you and I are going through right now does have distinct advantages for us. That I know. You say, John, how do you know that? Well, it's very simple. Every crisis and every adversity in the history of the world has turned into terrific advantage for society. Again, I remember I mentioned yesterday, every medicine you take was because there was an adversity, a problem. Somebody had something that needed to be cured, so somebody went and invented a medicine. In other words, good things come out of bad things if you have the right perspective. If you have the wrong perspective, that's not true. So this lesson is on how do I take the adversity and gain some advantage out of it for myself, for my family, for my community, for others. And when I go to perspective, here's the quote: how we view things is how we do things. So it's possible for two people to view adversity and have two different responses to that adversity. One takes adversity and turns it into an advantage, and the other one takes adversity and says, oh, I'm at a disadvantage, and I'm a victim, and they just basically lay down, and instead of getting better, they get worse. Same adversity, same situation, two total different responses. Now, the responses are based upon a person's perspective. Let me give you an example. Albert Einstein, here was a brilliant fellow. Albert Einstein said this: in the middle of difficulty lies opportunity. Now, I've loved that statement for quite some time, and I share it with you because I think there's something very interesting in what Albert Einstein said. He said it was in the middle. In the middle. In fact, when I put that quote in here, I capitalized all the letters on middle. In the middle of difficulty lies opportunity. You know what Einstein was saying? He's saying you have got to get into the crisis. You have got to get into the middle of the problem before you see how to get opportunity out of it. Because at the beginning, we don't understand how deep the problem's going to be. It doesn't affect us enough to take away our options so that all of a sudden we get desperate for an answer. It's not at the end. If by the end we haven't seen opportunity, to be honest with you, we just passed it. The door was back in the middle. But in the middle of difficulty, adversity, crisis, that's where Albert Einstein said, that's where we find opportunity. It's that type of thinking, perspective for you and me that I want to talk about, because trust me on this, if we have the right perspective, we're going to find that to be very true. Now, let me give you an example. Now, this is a business example. Some of you are in the business world, some of you are not. So let me just give you this one because I read it just the other day, and it fits the business community. So if you've got a team, if you've got an organization, you got a big company, small company, whatever. This comes out of Forbes. And when I was going through and reading this, the thing that really grabbed my attention was the headlines. It said the coronavirus crisis is creating problems, but it is also creating tremendous opportunities. This comes out of Forbes. And so then they gave an example. And the example they gave there, I know pretty well. And they gave the example of the Ford Motor Company. And the Ford Motor Company, if you go back about 12 years, had quite a few years consecutive of poor performance. They were in a recession, and they needed to finance. In fact, they were so desperate that Bill Ford, the father of the whole Ford clan, basically sat down and had to talk them into collateralizing and the blue Ford Oval. The thing that's most precious to Ford is that brand, that trademark. And they literally had to take that and use it for collateral to borrow money to get themselves financially in a position where they could maybe upright themselves. And then they also brought in Alan Malawi, brought in an outsider, a terrific leader. And if you know the story, it's an incredible story. It's a story of an amazing turnaround, maybe the most amazing corporate turnaround in this century. But what I want you to see is it was only in the adversity, the heavy crisis. I mean, what would make the Ford family say, okay, we're going to use this incredible trademark as collateral to borrow money? I mean, that's the last thing in the world they wanted to give up. But can I tell you something? A crisis will make you do things that you wouldn't do without the crisis. Let me just stop and talk to you for a moment. You and I both know in our heart that there are some changes we won't make unless we have to make them. Now, I speak for myself. In my life, there have been a few times I just didn't want to make the change until all the other options were stripped away from me, and one day I looked at myself and said, I've got to make the change.
So that was a short and sweet video, but I'm sure it's spiked everyone's awareness here. Let's look into our session 1 here. And again, for those who just joined us, the participant guide is in the chat section, so you can grab that there. But some really good stuff here that we heard in this video. One thing was how we view things is how we do things. So you might want to write that down. It's a very big perspective to think about. How we view things is how we do things. And then next, and Jessica pointed this out, in the middle of difficulty is opportunity. In the middle of difficulty is opportunity. And then a crisis will stretch you to grow. Thank you, Jessica. So let's look in our book here. John Maxwell talks about how to turn adversity into an advantage, and he offers first main teaching point. Again, I just said that. How we view things is how we do things. Even in the midst of a global crisis that we're into, leaders must remember that perspective determines actions, which determines influence. People are looking for leaders who will rise up through all of this and keep a level head and maintain the course. Keep moving forward, that is. And if you want to lead well, you must guard your perspective. There's a lot of negatives that we could pull out of all that's going on right now. The closing of businesses, the fact that we're quarantined, the virus itself, all of that's going on is definitely wreaking havoc on people. And mental health issues are through the roof right now because people are buying into the negative side of this whole pandemic. And yes, there is a lot of negative that's going on to it, but we got to keep the right perspective. So John noted that within the many messages of concern about COVID-19, there were positive messages that we should notice. We know what the virus is. We have a test for detecting it. The virus can be wiped clean, and all of the global scientific community is throwing their weight behind efforts to contain and cure. While it's challenging to discover, much less embrace, those messages when the world feels out of control, that's exactly what leaders are called to do, to bring hope out of chaos. And lastly, on this last paragraph, John shares that one of the main benefits of the crisis in the elimination of competitive boundary conditions, as unhelpful boundaries collapse, right? Life as we knew it is not there anymore, pretty much. The landscape has changed. New opportunities have developed. It says innovation and partnership increases, and the more better solutions are found. So in the midst, again, in the midst of the calamity, in the midst of the pandemic, there is opportunity. But leaders must be aware, but leaders must be there to champion the potential for innovation and provide hope for a better way forward. So open up the microphones here, and for those who want to talk, and you can mute your mic as needed. But the question is for us, why is it so easy to have a negative perspective when a crisis hits? Why is it so easy to have a negative perspective when crisis hits? What do you all have to say about that? What's your thoughts behind that?
I guess I'll go first. People have a tendency of being very uncomfortable in change. When a crisis hit, it impacts your financial, your household. Relationship. There's a lot of stress on relationships as well. But I think that financial impact is one of the biggest things that a lot of people are going through right now.
Right. Anybody else? Anybody else? Go ahead, Gary.
The main thing that a lot of people go into when a crisis hits. And you have to have a different outlook at the situation where you don't fear it, so you don't depend on that certain thing.
Right on. Well, as we're going to hear as we continue to dive into John's teaching here on leading through crisis, we're going to hear about that very thing, about fear, just because we're going through this thing as leaders doesn't mean that we are not feeling fear. We may be feeling fear, but we're going to choose to rise above that fear. And here's an expression: do it afraid. Do it afraid, right? We're going to do it afraid. So let's talk about this for a quick second. What negative perspective has this crisis had on you specifically? What are you challenged with? And I like that what Jessica said. She says that she agrees that change creates fear, and it does in all of us. And not all of us are afraid of change so much as being fearful of what change will bring, right? So, but again, who's dealing with something? If you feel like sharing, what specifically is a negative perspective that you've experienced through this crisis?
I like interacting with people face to face. So that's one of the huge negatives where it's like, you can have your Zooms and stuff like that, but like going out and meeting new people and just hanging out and kind of reading body language and stuff. I'm worried I'm going to be rusty when I get out of this thing,
Right. Yeah, absolutely. Are you a high fiver?
Big high five. I'm a big high fiver. Yeah.
Yeah. I like to high five too, and connect with people. And us extroverts are really needing that connectivity with people from a physical sense, that we're, like you said, reading body language and things of that nature. So thank you, Jack, for sharing that. Gary, do you have something?
Just that, like you said, I'm one that likes to deal with people, and staying at home does not allow us to get out there very often. But when I do, I get excited about, talking to people in line and waiting to get into the stores and stuff.
Right. and right now, I don't know if you guys have noticed this, but even standing in line with people, or my wife and I just took a walk around our block, and it's interesting how people from maybe 100 yards away will be changing the sides of the streets, or some people are having a hard time even saying hello, and it's become weird as far as that goes. But so are the times that we're in. Jessica says that she has kids who are old enough to understand what is occurring, and it's been a challenge to educate them about the crisis without adding to the worry. And yes, Jessica, we hand it off to you. Our hats are off to you, that is, that you are trying to keep them calm and from a positive perspective, even in the midst of the craziness that's going on around us. So let's move on to question number 2. What are some of the challenges that prevent leaders from finding positive news in times of crisis? That's a good one. Anybody? What are some of the challenges that prevent leaders from finding positive news in times of crisis?
Knowing that their people are suffering, or not suffering, just struggling, so kind of the burden of people around them.
Yeah. Some of the challenges that prevent leaders from finding positive news in times of crisis. Well, I suppose it's turning off the news. However, hasn't it been interesting that there's been very little news, at least in this market that we live in, about robberies and shootouts and people being killed and things of that nature. It seems like if everything has stopped, even crime to some extent. And what's this? Jessica says the lack of positive news to share. Yes, that's true. You have to search for the positive, and yes, we do. Even the news, even with this, the sadness of this COVID-19 pandemic that's going on, and the news of all these people that have lost their lives, there's been very little news on those that have had the virus and survived it. Right? There's been little news on that, and there should be a lot of news on that. You're welcome, Jessica. So it's hard to find positive news, but as leaders, we got to be searching for, I like to say, the silver lining in the gray cloud, right? We got to look for the positive. We got to find the hope in the midst of despair. And it's not being naive, right? I know a gentleman, in fact, it was my wife's uncle who was on his deathbed. And I challenged my wife and family to let us err on the side of him recovering as opposed to him dying, right? Now we see, the doctor's already come out and said that he's going to pass away and all of that. And we know that. We're not ignorant to that. But sometimes when we get on that side of it, on the side of death, we go and start preparing funerals. We start preparing for the death as opposed to making at least the last moments of his life count, right? And the same thing in the middle of a crisis, people panicked and went crazy and ran out and bought up all the toilet paper. We panicked and we erred on the side of crisis and chaos as opposed to the other side, the side that there's going to be hope and the sun is going to shine again. So anybody have any thoughts on that? All right, well, let's move on to number 3. Which, if any, of John's positive observation from the COVID-19 crisis surprised you, and why? Do you remember anything that he said that was positive, that surprised you during this video clip that we watched? Well, he challenged us with the quote that said that, in fact, Jessica quoted it, and she said that in the middle of difficulty is opportunity. In the middle of difficulty is opportunity. John shared about that some more, to the point of we don't know what opportunities lie in the middle until we get to the middle of the situation, because we need time to assess it, especially with this coronavirus, this quarantine. None of us have ever experienced anything like this in our whole lifetime. And yet we're experiencing something that that is new to all of us. There's no guidebook. There's no rules to follow. We're all doing this by the seat of our pants, and the president's doing the best he can. Our governor's doing the best that she can, and so forth, just based on, what we hope those who are educated enough to tell us about what's going on with this virus and things of that nature and how to handle it. So this is all new. But you know what? One thing about it, our leaders, like the president and our governor here in Michigan, they've come back with some very positive reinforcement that we're going to get through this. We're going to succeed. We're going to rise again, right? And so that's what we need to be focusing on through the midst of all this. So number 4, why do you think competitive or unhelpful boundaries exist? Why do you think competitive or unhelpful boundaries exist?
What does it mean by unhelpful boundaries?
That would mean the challenges that we have or that we're facing are not helping us achieve our goal, achieve our company's goal as a leader. So the ones that are competitive that cause us to work at it versus those that are unhelpful that are just in our way.
Gotcha. Okay. I don't know. Obviously the COVID-19 is a pretty big boundary right now for the success of companies, but I think the market is going to be so consumer friendly once we're out of this. You have CVS that's doing 1 to 2 day home delivery. You got Ford. If you buy a vehicle from them, they'll drop it off in your driveway. These are things that the market is going to demand. From a consumer standpoint, we're like, well, heck yeah. We might have been asking for this for a long time, but it's going to make us stronger, especially our supply chains. I think, a lot of things are going to start coming back because, we have to have better contingency plans. But I think, from a competitive standpoint, you're seeing companies duke it out in a time of desperation to say, hey, how are we going to make it easier on our customers? And this is phenomenal. It's not, no life is worth this, but the market, once it recovers, is going to be so consumer friendly. It's going to be something we've never seen before.
Yes, I agree totally. My co-founder of a real leadership company, Bert Koppel, he might jump on and join us sometime, but he shared this great fact. By the way, we have another mastermind that we have on Saturdays called Put Your Dream to the Test by John Maxwell. But he was sharing how there's a lot of, per se, restaurants that are going out of business, but these restaurants are all established. They've got everything you need. So, and chances are the rent will be very cheap, that you'll be able to go in and just start a new business and all the equipment's already there, ready to go. Now, it's sad that one company's going to lose out, but there's opportunity on the other side of this thing. And so that's pretty powerful when we think about that. And so we're going to see that on many levels. And so, yes, it's pretty exciting about what could possibly happen on the other side of this thing. As you were talking about, Jack, about the opportunities for even the buyer. I saw today my aunt is in real estate, and she said something to the fact that I think she said you could buy a car online now. Why not a house?
Right.
So, I mean, there's virtual tours and all those things going on. So that could be a possibility. But that's the day and age that we're in, or that we're going to be in. There's going to be many companies that decide, you know what, most of my workforce have done just fine from working at home. So I don't think we're going to need that building, or I don't think we're going to need as big a building. And I think we can keep our overhead costs down and having people stay at home and work. These new restaurants that we talked about. By the way, we have a podcast that we do. That's also on our website at realleadershipcompany.com. And we just interviewed a gentleman named John, and he has a food truck in Florida. And his business happens to be booming because he was already doing that food truck scenario where people just walk up and buy and leave anyway. So he was already in position of that. But we interviewed another restaurant owner. His name is Nate from Ohio, and he has a barbecue house, and he had to close his doors, but he's still hopeful that things are going to turn around. He's going to be able to reopen his doors. So there's two different perspectives there. So check those out in those podcasts. But it's very powerful to think about that. But getting back to the restaurant idea, and I'll wrap up with this, is that you don't even need to provide drivers to deliver food, because there's so many other options out there like Uber Eats and many things like that, DoorDash and so forth. So there's a lot of companies out there already doing that business, and they're probably booming in business right now because of all this. I know that my son works for FedEx, and I know they've seen an uptick in delivering packages and whatnot. So what a time to be living. Anybody have any comments on any of that? Let's look at number. Go ahead, Gary.
It's just a bad situation because that shows people don't really want to associate with other people. They want to keep to themselves nowadays, and that's a real sad thing, because we need communication with other people.
Yes, we do. Yes, we do. And I'm curious, out of that, we've got to be those voices that say, hey, we need to get this economy going. We need to be a part of encouraging people to get out of that sleep and slumber that we've been in due to this quarantine. And those that, I was just thinking about those parents that have had trouble with getting their kids to get out there and start working, and then they started working, and then this whole thing shut them down. Now they have to stay home, or get to stay home and get paid to stay home. This is gonna be great. I don't have to work another day in my life. And everybody's trying to figure out ways to make the money from the government and just stay home, because there's a lot of promise of more money just for staying home than to go to work.
Yeah.
So
yeah, I know. A couple of my buddies got raises with all these extra incentives and stuff to, get unemployment and stuff. So, yeah, no, it's wild.
Absolutely. So let's jump into number 5 here. Number 5 is, what about a crisis makes it easier for those kinds of boundaries to fall? What about a crisis makes it easier for those kinds of boundaries that we've talked about to fall?
I would say because it has to fall, otherwise things don't work. I mean, you look at Ford, manufacturing ventilators now. I mean, just the flexibility of a company to switch on a dime like that in a national crisis. I got chills talking about it. It's exciting.
It is. And I've referenced the book often, the book by Simon Sinek called The Infinite Game. And it's talking about how life is going to go on with or without us, somehow or some way. And how companies, we need to be in the mindset of keeping them infinitely growing and going. For instance, you mentioned Ford. If they had this definitive mindset to say, you know what, we make cars and that's all we're going to do. But no, they see an opportunity and they've seized that opportunity. The first company I heard of doing something that was very creative was a brewery, I believe here in Michigan, that started making hand sanitizer out of alcohol. They're a brewery. They make alcohol, right? And they've decided to retrofit everything and make hand sanitizer. That's pretty powerful to me that they did that, and they just jumped on it. And others are making hand sanitizing wipes, and some others are 3D printing face shields. Right? And it wasn't their job before. So pretty powerful. Jessica says, when faced with the unknown, people tend to look outside the box more. Yes, that's true. And it's outside of that comfort zone that the opportunity develops. Isn't that crazy? Isn't that great?
Hey, Tom.
Yeah.
I just wanted to jump in and make a comment.
Yes, sir.
I was just thinking that, with the examples you gave, I think the situation caused a lot of businesses to really focus more on people. Those companies that adjusted the products they were making so that supplies could be available to help others, really shows the heart of the people in that company, but the heart of the leaders in that company. And I think after this situation, of course, people are going to remember how you are there for them during a time of crisis or during a traumatic or stressful type of situation. So that's automatically going to build some type of loyalty because they're demonstrating that they care for people over profits, but also is giving everyone an opportunity to think in areas or in ways that they would not have originally thought and to expand beyond what they have done before. So it's one of those times where there's, like the video, John Maxwell said in the video, there's a forced shift, but also it's one of those things where everybody begins to just, get their juices turning. And right now, everybody's thinking about how can we support and help each other. But after this is going to be what becomes the new normal. What do we worked from home before. Do we stay that way? We have all of these delivery options now. Do we make that a part of our permanent business model? Even though I know people are going to want to get out and come frequent my restaurant. So it's really going to cause some thinking to how we do life and for it to be more of a dual type of situation between physical brick and mortar spaces as well as online, where previous to this, online was a feature and it was like, yeah, that's good, but it wasn't taken as serious. I think now it's going to have a higher place, in the minds of people.
That's good. Thank you for sharing that, Jamal. That's powerful because that's the very thing. We don't really know how things are going to turn out on the other side of this. However, as leaders, are we going to be a part of that change? And I think, Jamal, you hit the nail on the head. John has a statement that says, if the leader has no one following him, he's only taking a walk. Okay? So it's important that whatever we do is for the benefit of others, right? And I think that's great what you pointed out, Jamal, about these companies being others-minded. Yeah, and perhaps they were maybe taking advantage of an opportunity but on the other side of the coin, perhaps they were doing it for the sake of others, for being a blessing to others. And we've seen a lot of that happening, and a lot of people going the extra mile to make a difference in people's lives. We have a friend of ours whose daughter was having her sweet 16th birthday. We set up a caravan of cars with signs and balloons on them and did a drive-by by her house and honked our horns and cheered for her and made her 16th birthday a special one, as special as we could, because we couldn't be there in person, but to celebrate in a party form. So a lot of people are doing things like that to make a difference in people's lives, and that's powerful. And listen, if we're not others minded in what we're doing as leaders, then we need to stop and give the job to somebody else, because this is the time for us to rise up, to be there for our people, and to encourage them and lead them on. And it starts even in our home with our family and our children, as Jessica pointed out a little while ago. So yes, absolutely. So number 6, let's jump on to number 6 here. How does a leader know when to push past the boundary and call for collaboration? Push past the boundary and call for collaboration. Anybody? I like that, what you said, Jessica, that you're keeping a list of companies who you've seen do good during this time, so you can choose those companies over the ones that haven't stepped up. Right. Because obviously there's people like yourself and others that are watching to see who steps up and who are just out for themselves versus who are out for others. So this, how does a leader know when to push past a boundary and call for collaboration? Anybody?
I guess I'll jump in on that.
All right.
Collaboration is kind of a finicky thing. I believe that as a leader, you're always seeking out, or you should always be seeking out, the opinions of others, because I know John teaches that you should staff for your weaknesses. And so in the areas where you're not strong, you should have people around you that specialize in those different areas. And so you should always seek out their opinions, seek out their counsel, seek out their advice. But I find collaboration to be a fine line coming from the education field, because, collaboration can become a buzzword and people want to collaborate about everything, have a committee about everything. And, our school had 92 staff members. So you're talking about 20 people people want to get 20 people together just to get into agreement on the direction. And so sometimes there was the sense of over collaboration, meaning that we had to have too many discussions and we couldn't get anything done because we were caught in this cycle of constant discussion. And so I think, that part has to be managed. You have to know exactly who to collaborate with, make sure you're talking to the people who have the expertise in what you're seeking, but then also know when to talk to the smaller group before you push something to a larger group, which then goes to an even larger group, because you have to make sure that the work continues, that we balance, we're people-minded. And so, but it's very important that while we're considering the needs of people, that the service continues, because that's serving their needs too as well. So it's one of those things where it's a fine line and it's finicky, and you gotta almost trust your gut a little bit, as well as try to look at some external factors.
I agree 100% with that.
Yeah.
100%. I mean, we find it in corporate America. I worked for a smaller truss and component manufacturer, and then we got bought out by corporate. And it's all these level 10 meetings where nothing gets done. Where, yeah, collaboration is good, but the most important collaboration mostly happens on the lower levels.
Yeah.
Where like, hey, we got a truck coming here. Do you guys need us to help us? It's not on the big, yeah, it does sometimes, but once you get higher up, you get a lot of big egos involved in this and that, where you kind of lose the objective of, hey, let's actually move forward and get our stuff done that we have to do. So yeah, that's a really, really interesting point, Jamal. That was really good.
Yeah, so you got folks that are risk takers, and then those that are very reserved. Those that say, we've got to do all the cost counting. We got to do all the figures. I'm a numbers person, so I've got to figure out every dot and tittle. Whereas there's those that say, let's just go for it, right? And let it all wash out. And so that doesn't quite always work either. But that is the truth. I don't know if you men in the room have this issue, but with my wife specifically, I say, hey, where would you like to go to eat? She goes, anywhere is fine. And I say, well, how about such and such? Nah, let's not go there. Well, where do you want to go? Anywhere is fine. Okay, how about this place? No, they got this and they got that. Okay, where would you like to go? Anywhere. And so we keep going back and forth in this thing. And I think that's what comes to happen sometimes in the collaboration part of it. But John also says that there are no self-made men or women, right? We require connecting with other people. And Jamal, you said it at the beginning of your statement, that we need to staff our weaknesses, right? We need to have someone come alongside of us who can collaborate with us, not just cooperate, but collaborate with us, so that we can go the extra mile and make a difference. Any other comments on that before we go to the next question?
I was just going to say, Tom, what you were describing was definitely me and my wife, but I'm the one who's saying whatever, but then I don't want that.
Awesome. So number 7, why do you think innovation is able to soar in time of crisis? Why do you think innovation is able to soar in times of crisis?
I think I kind of touched on this earlier, but because it has to, right? And so you see with this administration, you have to develop a vaccine, a therapy, something. So they've expedited the FDA approvals and stuff like that. So in times like this that are unprecedented, it has to. We have to innovate. We have to do better. We can't just be complacent because we've never seen it before.
Well, that's interesting that you say that, and that is a true statement. But, I've seen over the course of my life that there are some folks, for instance, there are some people who maybe have tried to log on to the IRS or the unemployment website, and it crashed or it went down, and they've just decided, you know what, I'm going to give up. I'm not even going to mess with it. Or I've seen some situations where a microphone wasn't working when a speaker was talking. And so the people just sat back saying, I don't know how to fix it. And they just leave it there and leave things like they are. I'm like, why don't you get in there and do something, right? Doing something is better than nothing, because nothing is being achieved. So if you innovated, brainstormed, thought about it, maybe you could come up with a solution. But a lot of people are afraid to act, or just don't think to act because that's not my job.
Area. Mm-hmm.
Right? Jessica says crisis gets us out of that comfort zone. Yes, absolutely. So innovation is able to soar in times of crisis. And Jack, that was a good statement that you brought up. And so number 8, how can a leader leverage the possibility of innovation to share a message of hope? How can a leader leverage the possibility of innovation to share a message of hope? So think about that brewery. Think about the Ford and in those different industries that said, you know what, guys, guess what? We're going to make hand sanitizer. Guys, guess what? We're going to make ventilators, right? And so they saw the writing on the wall. They saw an opportunity. I think, what's his name? I can't remember the car manufacturer. The Elon Musk is his name, I think. Did I say that right?
Yeah.
But they were, I think it was him or some other companies that were figuring out how to use the automotive parts that they already have to make ventilators, right? So powerful, innovation going on. And, you know, how can we do things different? I believe it's Simon Sinek's book, he was talking about Kodak, who had developed the digital camera 10 years or 15 years before it ever came out on the market. But they kept it on the downplay because they didn't want to lose the revenue they were getting from film. But then another company came out and dominated the market from the digital perspective. And where's Kodak today? How many of us hear about Kodak that much? Anybody? Right? So there's that innovation that signs of the time were on the wall, but they missed the mark. And John's saying in the middle of opportunity comes, in the middle of adversity rather, comes opportunity. So if we're on the other side of this thing, we might have missed the boat because now's the time to be innovative. Now's the time to think forward. So the application for today is to write down one thing you could do as a leader to stay positive in times of crisis. And share your suggestion with the group and write down any other suggestions that you find helpful. As John says, the more ways you have for staying positive, the more likely you will do so. There's a famous quote from the Bible that even says, as a man thinketh, so is he, right? Mm-hmm. And so we have to have a positive mindset. We have to have the mindset that says, you know what, we're going to succeed. We are going to persevere. We're going to overcome. Right? Again, erring on the side of positive, being optimistic instead of pessimistic all the time. Because sure, there is calamity all around us. There are businesses that are closed. We are in quarantine. There's all these things going on. But the sun will shine again. There's opportunities that await us just around the corner. And we're going to be like that, was that phoenix coming out, rising out of the ashes. And we're going to thrive again. And so I'm excited about that. Any comments on one thing you can do as a leader to stay positive in times of crisis? Anybody can share for that.
I think it's all about what you said when you quoted that passage, as a man thinketh in his heart. I think it's all about where you choose to allow your thoughts to go. Because, of course, you know, the way the negative information comes in swarms, it's easy to ride an emotional roller coaster yourself, especially. And then you're trying to get yourself in a good place to encourage your team. So I think it's just taking control of your thoughts. Where do you allow yourself to go? And then the information that you hear, how do you filter it? Do you filter it in light of the hope that you have of success, of prosperity, of seizing opportunities? And so I think, you know, it's just all about taking control of the thoughts. When you feel yourself becoming negative, you got to begin to even speak things out. You know, I really believe that the best way to deal with the thought actually is with the word. You know, when you think a negative thought, sometimes it's hard to push that thought out of your brain by just thinking. So, you know, I'm a very big fan of affirmation. So when those negative thoughts hit your head, then you have to start talking about something positive or doing something positive that will, again, align your brain, because you can't control what thoughts come to you, but you can control how long you think about them. One thing Dr. Caroline Leaf says, she says that, you have, I believe it's like 30 seconds when the thought comes to you to address it. Otherwise, it begins to grow negative branches in your brain. And so, you have like quick 30 seconds to really address that thought. And it has to be a conscious effort.
That's really good. Thanks for sharing that. What's that expression that says you can't stop a bird from landing on your head, but you can keep them from making a nest on your head? So this is a very powerful quote from Jessica here. She says she encourages her kids to look for the good things, like the Mr. Rogers quote. She's paraphrasing. Find the heroes in the background and encourage them to be the doer of good. That's pretty powerful. What's that? She says, I encourage them to be good by being an example and actually doing good herself. So leading by example. And people are looking for us to lead by example, not just be the cheerleaders so much, but to lead the way, right? To make a difference and to be a part of that difference. So let's think about this, moving on in the application portion of our guide today. And that is, think about this. What is the biggest lesson you've learned in this session about turning adversity into an advantage?
I would say it breeds innovation if you have the right mindset. There's just an unbelievable amount of potential that you never realize you have until situations like this.
Absolutely. I know for me, I'm scrambling around figuring out how to do things that I've never done before, or just never done in the way that I used to do them. Yes, absolutely. But we could sit back and say, oh, woe is me, and just lay back and watch the world go by. But as leaders, we can't do that. So next question, what are the two major things right now that are keeping you from seeing adversity in the right perspective? What are two major things right now that are keeping you from seeing adversity in the right perspective? Anybody? So by that silence, I'll take it that no one is seeing any adversity. We're all seeing the positive side of things. Number three, what are three boundaries you are expecting right now that are keeping you stuck in adversity? Anybody experiencing adversity that is keeping you stuck? Jessica said, watching too much news and letting emotions or fear lead. That's good. Thank you, Jessica. Those are the two major things keeping her from seeing adversity in the right perspective. All right, so number four, what are three things you could implement right now to help you look beyond fear to hope? What are some things we could implement right now? And I think this is kind of on the line to what you were searching for at the beginning of this mastermind, Jack, that you were looking for some answers. And hopefully by this or the next session, we'll get down to some more of that nitty gritty. But anybody could share something about something you could implement right now to help look beyond fear to hope. I don't know about you, but, I've had that thought in the back of my mind like these are some uncertain times. I was told that I might need to think of some other option come May because finances are low. But, there's two things going for me. One is I'm a positive person, and the other is I'm a person of faith. So I really believe that things can and will turn around. But it depends on our perspective. It really depends on our perspective. And so if we don't have a perspective of hope, well, we're not one to be in the room with anybody else because negativity can often rub off. Have you ever hung around a negative person and found yourself being negative thereafter? Absolutely. So we've got to surround ourselves with people who are positive, people who come with that positive approach, be encouraged by folks. Jessica says she stays in the Word and she keeps positive people and quotes around her or around you is the encouragement there. Anybody else have anything before we move on to the next question? Okay. So next question, what is the liberating truth you could create for this season of your life based on this mastermind session and John's lesson? What liberating truth? Did anybody find a truth out of what we talked about today?
Well, I like what was said in the video when John said that often, I can't remember exact way he said it, but he said in the middle of the crisis is when you find things. And so I like that because a lot of times we want answers at the beginning of the crisis. And so sometimes we have to, the truth I pulled out is that sometimes you don't get those answers or don't get the keys that you need until you're like in the middle, in the thick of it, to where, when you're kind of, just kind of swimming in it, basically, then you can kind of see more of what needs to be done. But, as leaders, we want to protect our people. We want to take care of people. So sometimes we want to beat ourselves up and say, hey, I should have saw this coming. Or you want to be able to have the answers right away, and so, but it's good to know that sometimes it's okay not to have the answers right away.
Yes, that's good. Yeah, because sometimes we don't, but we're not going to run away and hide out. We're going to take the steps necessary to find and seek the answers, right? Because the answers are out there somewhere, somehow, some way. So we've got to be willing to press out. There's an expression in the John Maxwell team. This is kind of on the same topic, but this is jump and build your wings on the way down. Jump and build your wings on the way down. We interviewed, as I said, a restaurant last week or this past week, and I told him to jump and grill his wings on the way down. So yeah, it's pretty funny. But another thing that Jessica said, she says she's a huge fan of vision boards to go back and stay encouraged as well. So what a great idea, the vision boards and perhaps some quotes that you can put up around you. Some things you can hang on your refrigerator or on your wall or on your mirror in your bathroom, something to help remind you of that the sun is going to shine again, that we are going to rise again. There's going to be a resurgence, and do we want to be part of that? Do we want to be part of that resurgence? Do we want to be a part of what's happening, what's going to happen? How can we even collaborate with those who are doing something? Let's say that we don't specifically have a dream ourselves, but what if someone else has a dream? We go alongside with them. and help them fulfill that dream until we catch a vision or a dream of our own. So that is the silver lining, I guess, for all of us, is to be looking for ways that we can find and help people in this day and time. And as we're seeing all across America, people are doing things that are very encouraging. Those who are making cards and greeting cards and things of that nature, and sending them to those who are working in the medical field, thanking them for what they're doing. Something I've been seeing lately is pictures that UPS drivers have taken of their customers who have put thank you notes on the outside of their doors, thanking them for delivering packages to them. There's all kinds of things that we could be doing, but what can we do? What will we do? Let me challenge us all today. What is something that we can do together today that will make a difference in the lives of others tomorrow? What can we do? What can you do to make a difference in the lives of others? I want you to be thinking about that question and then act on it. You don't have to have $1 million in the bank to do it, right? A simple greeting card, a phone call, going out of your way to do something somehow to make a difference in somebody else's life. There's a quote that says, in order to get what you want, you have to help enough people get what they want. So how can we be a blessing in the lives of other people? How can we help someone else? And at the very least, help them see the hope and the proper perspective in the middle of the adversity that's going on around us. Any comments on that? All right, well, we're coming to a close on this first session together. We ended a little early today, but that's okay. So I want to tell you that we'll be here again next, what is this, Thursday. Next Thursday at 7 o'clock. You've already registered, so you're very able to jump right back on board using the same link you used tonight. And what was that? Jessica said, she said, we are giving gift cards and thank you notes to our mail carriers. That's great. Great idea. Great idea to do that. And then, we have some other things going on with the Real Leadership Company. You can check that out at realleadershipcompany.com, as well as our mastermind on Put Your Dream to the Test. It's happening on Saturdays, rather. Sorry, I'm a little scrambled at the moment. But Put Your Dream to the Test. Both Bert Koppel and myself are hosting that mastermind, and it's pretty powerful that's going on there. But we want you to be encouraged. That's why we put this mastermind together of leading through crisis. We need to be encouraged. And guess what? We have a lot of time on our hands. So we need to use this time to think of ways to strategize, to dream, and to rise up from the ashes and be better, even better people than we were before. To take a different look at how we do things and how we communicate with people. Yes. So Jessica says, thank you, everyone. She says, I appreciate all of the insight. Anybody else have anything to add as we wrap up tonight?
It's good to have a stimulating conversation again.
Wonderful.
With new people,
Yes. And thank you, Jack, for chiming in and sharing. Jamal?
No, I just wanted to say thank you guys. It was a great conversation.
Awesome. Thank you for being a part. And if you need any more information, again, realleadershipcompany.com, you can check us out there and find our Facebook and as well as contact information. But otherwise, we'll be here right back here at 7 o'clock next Thursday. And we'll be doing this for 2 more weeks, sharing from this topic, leading through crisis. And I appreciate you all so much for being a part of this. And do us a favor and share this with others. Encourage them to come and be a part of this. You can find the link for this on our Facebook page as well as our website. So go ahead and share that with others and get them to come out to be a part of this discussion.